I've been a big fan of superheroes for pretty much my entire life, but nothing brought that love to the forefront quite like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Growing up, I loved the interconnectivity these movies shared, with plot points and character arcs spreading between movies, which I could follow to pick apart the connective tissue of. Even to this day, I'm a big fan, despite the decline of many people's interest in the last few years. So many people go into making these movies, from the producers, to the actors, to the costume designers, to the topic of this video series, the directors. I thought it would be a fun idea to take a look at each director that's placed their ingredients into the Marvel pot, and see what else they've offered the world of cinema. In this video series, I will be looking at every MCU director and ranking their filmographies, both against themselves and each other. I will only be including narrative feature films. That means no television, no documentaries, no short films, and no filmed stage productions. Seeing as this is the first video, there's no better place to start than with the MCU's first director. Jon Favreau's first movie stars himself and Vince Vaughn as two mobsters on their first big job. The movie is incredibly charming, with talented cinematography and very natural dialogue. Vince Vaughn gives an incredibly funny performance, and he was a joy to watch on screen, but the standout star of the movie is Favreau himself. His character Bobby is the much more serious side of this duo, who has to put up with his partner's antics, and is typically the one getting them out of trouble. This means that he's usually cast to the side in the scenes he shares with Vaughn. However, the film is practically bookended with scenes focused on him, where he really gets a chance to show his acting chops, and it's these scenes that really make the whole movie for me. Also, I feel like it's worth pointing out that this movie released 2 months before 9/11, and in a scene where the main characters are on a plane to New York, this joke is delivered.
If we didn't have to, be on call, we could drink as much as we want, but we really shouldn't.
Oh, yeah, because you know they're probably going to page us and ask us to whack out the pilot up front.
That is some unfortunate timing.
Frog's on purple, by the way. Have you ever seen a purple frog? Yeah? Okay.
Elf is one of my absolute favorite Christmas movies. It's one of the few that I make sure I watch every holiday season. Will Ferrell is an absolute delight to watch as Buddy the Elf, and his chemistry with every one of his co-stars is incredible. There isn't much new I could say about this one, but it is such a feel-good movie for me, and it always manages to get me in the Christmas spirit. I watched it in June though, so what am I supposed to do with that?
Why don't you just say it? I'm the worst toy maker in the world. I'm a cotton-headed ninny-muggins.
Typically when adapting a book to film, a lot is lost in translation, but when your book is this big, you run into quite the opposite problem. Adaptations of children's books are very interesting to me because instead of cutting content out to fit a runtime, you have to add content in. And this movie not only has fun with its additions to the story, but I even think it improves upon the book. Most notably, the movie has an actual ending where the characters finish the game and are changed by the events of the story. And yes, I did give the original book a read for this video. For this video essay series, I want to watch every movie within the full context of how it exists. That means watching the originals of remakes, watching the previous installments of a sequel, and consuming the original media of adaptations. Speaking of, while this film doesn't appeal to the same emotional level that Jumanji does, I feel that the sci-fi premise leads to more interesting interactions with the game. While I still prefer Jumanji as a movie, I can't deny that Zathura is more exciting to watch.
You wish for a football.
I'm by Brett Favre.
Why'd you wish for a football?
And we finally make it to Iron Man, the movie that kickstarted the entire MCU, for better or worse, depending on who you ask. I've always liked this film, but after reading some of the comics that were the direct inspirations for key moments, I love it even more. This movie does such a great job of adapting key moments from these books, particularly Tales of Suspense 39, which is Iron Man's first appearance, as well as his origin story, and Iron Man number 200, which features his big climactic battle with Ironmonger. Side note on this, Ironmonger has actually stayed dead in Marvel's primary comic universe since this issue, which, if you know anything about comics, is a pretty rare occurrence. Anyway, this movie does an incredible job at modernizing these comics without losing the core of who these characters are. As big of a fan as I am of this franchise, I can recognize that doing that is not always a priority, even in the movies I like otherwise.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Iron Man 2 is one of only a handful of MCU movies that I actively dislike. It's much less inspired than its predecessor and feels bloated with franchise setup. Though not to the same levels as movies like Amazing Spider-Man 2, Age of Ultron, or Batman v Superman, it's certainly there. This movie is intended to be a loose adaptation of the iconic comic book arc Demon in a Bottle, and it does include many key elements: Justin Hammer, Whiplash, Tony recklessly forgoing the responsibilities in his life, but it does miss the most important element of this story: alcoholism. Instead, this movie decides to replace that theme with Tony Stark slowly being killed by his arc reactor until he finds a new way to make one that doesn't do that. Here's the thing though, he literally needs that to live. You can't make a story about addiction without an actual addiction. And what's worse is that the movie has a couple moments that could contribute towards a proper story about alcoholism if they just followed through on it. The movie isn't without its merits, though. Robert Downey Jr. still brings an incredible charisma to the role, Sam Rockwell is a fun addition to the cast, and that whole race sequence is just flat out cool.
I got something special for this guy. I'm gonna bust his bunker with the ex-wife.
The what?
Cowboys and Aliens somehow managed to turn a boring nothing burger of a comic into a boringer, nothinger, burgerer of a movie. Why even attempt to adapt this comic in the first place? It has nothing interesting to offer. It tries to make a commentary on how the aliens invading is similar to the white man taking over native land, but does absolutely nothing with the premise. And maybe that's why the movie decides to run in a completely different direction. Seriously, the similarities between the comic and the movie end with the title. There's cowboys, and there's aliens. The characters are completely different, the plot has next to nothing in common with the source material, and yet, despite all that, it manages to leave me feeling even more empty than the comic. If the movie was going to be this bad, the least you could have done was put in the flying horses. Harrison Ford does give a really good performance, though, and that just barely saves this film from being rated any lower.
I am gonna watch you suffer for a long time.
What a wonderful change of pace. Chef is an incredibly beautiful and personal film about art and artistic integrity, which is something I really connected to. I watched this right after writing the Cowboys and Aliens segment of the script, and to be honest, Carl's breakdown in front of the food critic made me feel a little bad for what I wrote. Which leads me to a point I've been trying to figure out how to fit into this video. As much as the point of this video is to examine a single director's body of work, it is important to note that while the director's voice is often the loudest, it is never the only voice in a film. Film is an incredibly collaborative art form. You've got actors, editors, cinematographers, studio executives all giving their input and influencing the finished product. Anytime I've mentioned something I didn't like about one of these movies, that doesn't inherently mean it's Jon Favreau's fault. And that sentiment applies to every video in this series going forward as well. Anyway, back to the film at hand, I loved it. Jon Favreau has placed himself back in the lead, and he gives an incredible performance. I can tell that this film is incredibly personal for him. In fact, there's a great video essay by Ben from Canada over on the Mr. Sunday Movies channel about how this movie is really about Jon Favreau's feelings towards the process of making Iron Man 2 and feeling creatively trapped by it until he is able to make something he's passionate about again, being this film. Obviously, we don't know how much truth there is to that, but it's a very good analysis of the movie, and I highly recommend you check it out.
I get to touch people's lives with what I do. and it keeps me going, and I love it.
This is in no way an unpopular opinion, but I am really not a fan of Disney's trend of remaking their animated films. I find the concept to be completely lacking in creativity, and the finished products look completely soulless. It's for these reasons that I just avoid them almost entirely, except of course when it becomes necessary to make these videos. That said, however, The Jungle Book is the exception to this, and it may even be a little bit better than the original. The plot actually flows from scene to scene much more naturally compared to the original's non-sequiturs. The villain, Shere Khan, has a presence throughout the entire film rather than just showing up for the last third of it. The climactic fight has proper foreshadowing as opposed to, oh, by the way, he's afraid of fire. And it doesn't have this ending that just made me really uncomfortable to watch as an adult. Plus, it even includes a handful of elements from the original stories that are not present in the animated film. There are some areas, though, where the remake does not improve. The jokes are mostly removed, and where they are present, they are just nowhere near as funny. Also, Baloo is completely changed as a character, and I just do not find the Bill Murray version to be nearly as compelling, especially when comparing the scenes where he drives Mowgli away.
Look, Mowgli, I've been trying to tell you. I've been trying all morning to tell you. I've got to take you back to the man village.
Oh, I mean, do I have to spell this out? I don't want you around anymore. Well, I did it. And that's about the hardest thing I've ever done.
Additionally, I don't find the acting from Mowgli to be all that great, but I've seen way worse child actors as well.
Oh, me too. I want to be like you.
And on the other hand, I despise the Lion King remake with every fiber of my being. This is the epitome of everything wrong with these movies. All the Disney magic is stripped away from this iteration. The character designs are reduced down to nothing. During certain parts of the final fight, I had trouble telling Simba and Scar apart. Plus, the characters are completely expressionless the entire time, which is ridiculous because lions are actually incredibly expressive animals. When it follows the original movie, it's the most watered-down version it can be, and when it deviates, they just make some utterly bizarre choices.
Can you feel the love tonight?
Watching this movie felt like a chore and just left me incredibly depressed about the future of art. At one point, Timon starts singing Be Our Guest as if Disney just expected me to point and go, hey, I know that one!
Slimy, yet satisfying.
Extra crunchy.
They're local.
Yeah. Oh, are they?
They're from right there.
Putting these 9 movies together, Jon Favreau ends up with an average score of 3.28, which is not a bad start to this series. I'll be interested to see how other directors compare. Overall, Jon Favreau has a good filmography under his belt. He's got some low lows, but even more highs. In the last few years, he's shifted over to TV, overseeing The Mandalorian for Disney Plus alongside Dave Filoni, as well as being involved in its handful of spin-offs. I love what he's doing over there and can't wait to see what he's cooking up next, especially with the Ahsoka series right around the corner. I would love to see him return to movies someday, but for now, I'm content with what we have. Well, that's one director down, and a growing list more to go. Next time, I'll be taking a look at Louis Leterrier's filmography, and I can't say it looks the most inspiring.